Today we're going to be going over Michael Ricci Jr.'s testimony in his mom's murder trial. His testimony is pretty upsetting, and there's some very detailed things in it that I might have to censor out so YouTube doesn't flag me. But we're going to try to get through it all, and I'm going to give my thoughts on how I thought it landed for the state and for the defense.
I wanted to start and just talk a little bit about your parents' relationship before October of 2018.
Sure.
You mentioned on direct examination that their relationship, you described it as good.
Yes.
They did things together.
Yes.
They were affectionate.
Yes.
They expressed love for one another.
They did.
You never expected in any regard that they had problems in their relationship based on what you saw.
Based on what I saw, no.
Right. They certainly never started sleeping in separate bedrooms or doing anything like that before 2018.
Not that I noticed, no.
Okay. And they seemed to have an open relationship where they talked about things.
I don't know what they talked about,
But in your presence, they would talk about things.
What do you mean?
Well, they seem to have open communications about their feelings and things like that before 2018 also.
Sure, if they're being affectionate, like I love you to each other, yeah. But I don't know.
Right.
The deep feelings between each other, I wasn't there
Privy.
for that, so. Yeah.
You guys ate dinner together.
Yes.
By the way, when dinner was prepared, who would be primarily the preparer of dinners? It was your father, wasn't it?
My dad, yes.
Yeah. And he would be the one to use the cooking knives, right?
Sure, yeah.
And in fact, the cooking knives were a gift, weren't they, from Christine to your father?
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay. They were thought of as his kitchen knives, weren't they, or the cooking knives?
They were the cooking knives.
Okay. All right. Your relationship with your father was extremely close.
He was my hero.
He was a firefighter. You, for a while, wanted to be a firefighter. Is that right?
Yes.
He was in the military. You wanted to be in the military.
Yes.
Essentially, he was sort of a role model, wasn't he?
He was.
And when you think as highly of someone as you think about your father, it must be very hard to hear people say things that are not flattering about them, correct?
When I was younger, yes.
Yeah.
It was tough to hear, yeah.
And even when you were just getting out of high school in like 2018, to hear him talk about himself badly was also a painful experience since you loved him and he was such a role model to you.
Yes, it was tough, yeah.
Right.
His testimony really breaks my heart. As the defense is kind of laying out, he really looked up to his dad, was very proud to have him as a father, and now to be testifying against his mom because his dad is dead is just so sad.
So when he came home in October of 2018 and sat everybody down and told you that he was an alcoholic, that must have been a pretty big blow to you, right?
It wasn't more of a blow, it was more of a confusion.
Right. And when he told you after that, you immediately went and he told you about the affair. That must have been extremely difficult for you to hear that.
That was a little bit tough, yeah.
Yeah. Because you didn't like holding the thought that your father had done something like this, given the way you thought about him.
Well, we put our heroes on high pedestals as
Right.
kids, so it was tough to hear, yeah.
Right. And it was clear during the conversation about the alcoholism, wasn't it, that was done with both you and Sophia present?
Sophia
Me and her
is his
were next to each other on the
sister.
couch,
Okay.
yes.
And then he had the private conversation with you alone in the car.
Yes.
Was it clear to you during the conversation in the car that he was suggesting that his alcoholism played a role or was part of the story of the affair?
All he told me was that he saw another woman.
Okay. Did he tell you about, but it was clear at that point that he was saying that he was an alcoholic.
He didn't say that in the car with me. There were two. We talked about the alcoholism when we sat down. All he said was that I saw someone else in the car. He didn't say I saw someone else because I was drinking. That wasn't told to me.
He had just told you that he was an alcoholic, and now he was telling you about another woman. Do I have that correct? About less than an hour later?
Yes.
When he told you about the other woman, did he say, that whole thing that I said earlier about alcoholism, I was just saying that?
No.
He didn't mention anything about that when you were alone.
Yeah. No, he didn't say that.
He would have known that you understood his words earlier to mean that he was saying that he was an alcoholic, correct?
If he was assuming that to me, then sure. But
Well, he said it to you, right?
well, all he said was that I saw another woman. I mean, that's
But in the group meeting, he said, "I'm an alcoholic."
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he never contradicted it when you were alone with him.
no.
Okay. After that conversation, you said that your father's sobriety date was 11/11.
I believe so.
Okay. So, even though he said he was an alcoholic in October of 2018, it may have taken him some time to start doing AA. Is that your understanding?
It seemed pretty immediate.
Pretty immediate. Okay.
Yeah.
So he starts doing AA immediately, right?
It seemed pretty quick.
And he started going to meetings almost daily, right? Multiple times a week.
I didn't pay attention how quickly he went, but
Okay. You know that eventually he started going almost daily, right?
sure. Yeah.
And you're aware that he got a sponsor, correct?
He did, yeah.
Yeah. And you're aware that he was working the steps of AA, correct?
Yes.
And you're aware also that he would do commitments, correct? Where he would go talk to other AA groups?
I didn't know about that. No,
Okay.
I didn't know he'd talked to other groups.
Okay. Did you know that he went to a men's group?
I don't know
You
how
didn't
it
know, right?
works, so I don't really know.
Okay. So you never knew all the details of all the AA that he did. You just knew about his regular group meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. So he didn't talk to you about the men's group or doing commitments. Do I have that right?
Yeah, no, that's very personal to him, so.
Okay. So you just don't know about that.
Yeah, I just wasn't
Okay.
there for it.
It was clear to you, though, after that conversation in the car in the Shaw's parking lot where he says, "I was seeing another woman," that his plan is that he's going to stay and he's going to be working on the marriage. That was your understanding, right?
That was my understanding, yeah.
And part of that work meant that he was going to start going to counseling.
Sure.
Did he tell you about that in the car, or did you just find out that later?
That
when you
was
saw?
later on known information to me.
Okay. But your understanding was that he was there and he was going to do whatever work was necessary to fix the relationship.
Yes.
And did he communicate that to you in the car?
Not in the car, no.
Okay. But within about 2 months, you start seeing some real effort on the part of your father to get sober, to start going to counseling and do these things. And you forgive your father, don't you?
I do.
Within a couple months.
Well, I was supportive of my father.
Of course, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
But you had sort of, if you had any feelings about the fact that he had the affair, within about 2 months, seeing his efforts, you reconciled yourself to forgiving your father.
I didn't condone him for what he did, but I let him know that I'm not going to go anywhere and vilify him for doing it.
Right.
So I think that just kind of means that he isn't going to go as far to say that he had forgiven his father for the affair just at that 2-month time. Maybe supportive, but lingering feelings because it was only 2 months later.
And at that point, when you decided maybe about 2 months after that conversation, so we're talking end of 2018,
Okay, yeah.
does that make sense time-wise?
Yes.
More or less? Because you're out of the house by June 6, 2019,
Yeah.
right? So, end of 2018, you're seeing this effort by your father. You're feeling feelings of, forgiveness. You want things to go back to the way they were, don't you? The way they were before the conversation.
In a way, yeah.
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 The fact that the affair kept being brought up was keeping you from being able to go back to the way things were before the affair.
Well, I'm not one to look to go back to the past. I mean, it'd be nice to not have that be brought up every single day.
Right. And you felt like your mother was bringing it up every day, and you really started to have a feeling of resentment towards your mother because she kept bringing it up after you had decided that you wanted to kind of go back to the way things were.
Well, it wasn't just because of that. There were other variables at hand even before doing
Okay.
stuff with that.
Okay, but you did have, in 2018 into 19, you did have some resentment towards your mother based on the way she handled getting over the affair.
That was a factor, yes.
Yeah.
That was the only thing.
You had other reasons for resenting your mother, but there's no question that by the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, you had a lot of resentment for your mother.
She was getting aggressive in the fights, yes.
What's interesting to note is that she was getting aggressive with the whole family. He didn't say getting aggressive with my dad. That definitely shows maybe some more of her erratic behavior if she was willing to be that way towards her kids.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also, at that same period of time, didn't you? You were also working, or began to work, didn't you, for a guy by the name of Mac that you mentioned is close to your family?
Yes, I can't remember what year it started, but I believe I was working with him at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
So, were you already working with him, do you think, in October of 2018 when your father told you about the affair, or do you think that only happened after?
I started working for him after.
Okay. So maybe around the beginning of 2019?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, you said that your father, who had been working for Mac doing fire sprinkler installations, started tapering down his work with Mac.
Yes.
Right after October 2018.
Sure, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Now, as he was tapering off completely, that's when you started to work for Mac. Was there an overlap at all between you and your father?
I don't think we worked
together.
When I was on the payroll, I don't think we worked together.
Okay. So by the beginning of 2019, that whole thing had sort of ramped down, and you had ramped up, and you were working then with Mac, weren't you?
Yeah, I believe he was already gone by the time I officially started my first day.
Okay. Now, obviously, I don't have to remind you. Mark was a very important part of your family.
Yes.
He was almost like a family member, like an uncle, right?
He was, yeah.
Yeah. And when you first started working for Mac, he knew that you were having some sort of issues at home, like you were having some problems at home.
If he knew, he didn't tell me.
Okay. Didn't you guys have a conversation about he knew all the players, right? He knew your dad, your mom. He knew obviously your siblings. When you first started working, didn't you guys have conversations about the family situation?
Only because I told him what was going on.
Mm-hmm. And didn't he tell you that he had some sort of skepticism about your dad's drinking?
Basis. I'll let
Impeachment.
him have it.
Didn't he tell you that he had some doubts about your father's alcoholism?
That wasn't part of the conversation, no.
Didn't he express to you during the period of time in which you worked for him that he had some doubts about your father's alcoholism?
That's
Asked and
from my
answered.
recollection. That's not what he told me.
He never told you that he had some doubts about your father's alcoholism during the time that you worked?
He just told me of the relationship between the defendant and my dad.
Okay.
Him.
All right. Page 29 to 30. Do you remember coming into my office and having a conversation with me at my office?
I do, yeah.
About a month and a half ago?
Yeah.
And we taped the conversation?
We did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Handing you the document, does this look or purport to be a transcript of our interview?
Looks like it.
Okay. And obviously, Mr. Ricci, that's your name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it says here, it kind of gave me an idea what happened. And what did he say was happening at the time? Well, like I said, it was pretty much he was aware there was an affair, correct?
Correct.
And that would have been Mark?
Yeah.
Mac.
Or Mac, yeah.
Yeah. So by the time you were working with him, you already knew that there was an affair,
I already knew it. It
and he did too,
seemed like he did, yeah.
based on your conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and then you wrote that my dad claiming that he was an alcoholic, and I say, mm-hmm. When he was with him more than I was, like as a kid seeing him have like a beer or something, he would be with him, like a bar or something. But he's saying that he's an alcoholic, and I don't know if that's So was he expressing doubt? I asked, and you said yes. Do you remember saying that?
I do.
Okay, so Mac was expressing doubt about your father's alcoholism, right?
Well, I think it's more doubt of the situation overall,
Yeah.
especially with the affair.
And then I said, and that was the first time you began to entertain doubt, or you already had entertained doubt and you said, I had a little bit, but this solidified it for me. Like, because I saw him as a very trustworthy source of resource, so I trusted his words, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, Mark expressed to you during that time that he had some doubts about your father's alcoholism, and if you had some doubts already, your conversation with him solidified your doubts.
It wasn't specifically about alcoholism. It could have been a part of the conversation, but that wasn't what we were expressing doubt for, though.
But that's the part of the conversation I'm talking about. He did express doubt about your father's alcoholism, and if you had doubts before that, this conversations with Max, this trusted figure, solidified them for you, didn't it?
He did give me a reason to not have it be an option in my head, yeah. But
Mac, you mean?
Through body language, through him, yeah.
Yeah, because he was expressing skepticism in a bunch of ways about your father's alcoholism. And
Not just that, but overall with everything.
also about his mental health stuff, right?
Objection. Sustained.
You know that when your father was working for Mac, he had a company car, correct?
Yes.
A truck, right? Had like a company license plate on it.
Yeah.
And at a certain point after he stopped working for Mac, he ended up returning the truck back to Mac, didn't he? And getting
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
and then he got his own truck,
Yeah.
right? And at the same time that he was working for Mac, he also had a phone that was paid for by MCC, if you know.
I don't know if he gave him a phone or not. I don't know.
Okay. But it was clearly sometime in the early part of 2019 that your father stopped working for Mac, or late 2018 that your dad stopped working for Mac, correct?
Sure, I don't know exactly when, but that would be my guess. Would be
Yeah.
early 2019.
Because you started working at the beginning of 2019 for him, and by that time your dad's already sort of out already.
I didn't see him there at all when I first started.
And that was the beginning of 2019, right?
Yeah, around there.
Yeah. And it would have been sometime in the early part of 2019 that your father changed his phone number, right?
I believe so. I don't know exactly when though.
Okay. It was while you were still living at the house, though.
I can't say for certain. I don't know.
Okay. Now, as we said a moment ago, your father was going to AA, and he also was making a lot of AA friends, wasn't he?
I wasn't there for every meeting, so I don't know. I was only there for two.
2 meetings, you mean?
I believe so. Yeah, for only
Okay.
2 AA meetings, so I don't know what friends he made or not.
Okay. Do you know someone by the name of Bobby Higgins?
Yeah, I met a couple times.
Okay, he's a guy from AA, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. You know he was on an AA softball team?
Yes, he was.
Did you know that he did AA bowling?
I don't know about bowling, but I know there was a softball team.
Do you know that the house at 679 Moraine Street became kind of like a meeting point for all the guys at AA or some of the people at AA? Or was that after you left?
That's after I left. I'm sure there was.
Okay. So when you're talking about your father not having any friends post 2018, you really are talking about the old friends like Mac and that circle, right?
Well, the friends outside of Christine being with my dad,
And the friends outside of AA, right?
which are the
Okay.
friends that he didn't outside of
Okay.
it, yeah.
Outside of AA. You said that Christine had told you something about the fact that your father had like memory loss.
I was told that it was memory loss and different mental disorders.
Okay.
The answer will stand.
The memory loss part of it, where he said he lost something like 80% of his memory from alcohol or something like that.
Yes, sorry.
Do you think some of that was being said because your father was saying that he had memory loss from 2018?
I was told it from her, from the
Okay.
defendant.
Okay. You never heard your father talk about the fact that he was missing memory or claiming sort of broad-based amnesia for a period of time during 2018?
That was, all that information was told through the defendant
To you?
to me.
Okay. And you don't know if your father was saying that and that's why she was saying it. You just don't know.
She was next to him when she told me.
Mm-hmm. And he didn't say, no, no, no.
He looked there like he wasn't allowed to say a word.
Mm-hmm. So he didn't respond in any way, in other words?
He didn't, yeah.
Okay. Now, obviously, as part of AA, there's various milestones, but one of the biggest milestones is getting a year chip or a 2-year chip.
Sure. Yeah.
And you wanted to support your father, correct? And so you went to his 1-year chip ceremony.
I did.
Okay. And you described that ceremony as being your mom got up and talked for a half hour and your dad only talked for 5 to 10 minutes.
Roughly, yeah.
Okay. Is it your understanding that oftentimes at these chip ceremonies, the chip is given to them by someone who is close to them and has watched their sobriety journey?
No, it's the person going through the process of AA, from my understanding.
But what about the person who gives the chip and grants the chip to the person? Don't they often say words about the alcoholic?
That's
Or do you not know?
not my understanding of it, no.
Okay.
That was the process of the person going through alcoholism.
Okay. Other than those 2 Alcoholics Anonymous meetings that you went to or that you noticed in the house and the chip ceremony, do you have a broad-based understanding of Alcoholics Anonymous?
I have a basic knowledge, but I haven't been to AA, so I don't know the whole process of how it works.
Okay. Was that the only chip ceremony you ever saw?
Nope.
You've seen another chip ceremony?
It was the first month one too. And then my dad would have all his other chips.
Oh, so you've gone to a month chip
The
ceremony?
month one, yeah.
Okay. It's fair to say, though, that a year chip ceremony is a lot more important than the month chip or the daily chip that you get along the way as far as being a milestone.
I don't think one's more important than the other. I think
That's fair.
I thought that was a really
Personal
great response.
adversary that they go to. That's nothing for me to judge.
I completely understand that. I guess let me put that a little bit different. Certainly a year is a very big milestone, one that obviously you only have once every 365 days.
I mean, the 24 days can be as big as a 1 year.
So his response, I just thought, was very sound, very grounded in reality. He made several good points back to him that 20 days could be just as great as of an achievement than a year. And I just thought he comes across as a reliable and honest witness. I think he is definitely helping the state out more in this case. And as we go on, you'll see that he definitely doesn't hold back just because it's his mom that's on trial.
Yeah, in the individual scenario, but a 1-year chip has special importance and is often treated with more pomp and circumstance because it's such a major milestone.
It can be to other people.
It was a major milestone to your dad that he made a year of sobriety.
I don't know how he felt about it, but it can be as big as going for 24 days or 30 days.
Mm-hmm. Did he invite you to the 24-day ceremony?
I believe so. I think the whole family went.
Okay. And what about the every month chip after that? Did you go to those? Were you invited to those?
We were invited, but I don't think I went to them. No.
Okay. You made a special point of going to the year chip ceremony because it was important.
After hesitation, yes.
But you went even after hesitation because you recognized its importance to him.
Yeah.
And you were trying to be supportive.
As I always
Of course. Of course.
I wish that they would elaborate what was the hesitation. I don't think the state comes back and asks him, but it would be interesting to know why he was hesitant. But
So by the
ended up
time
going.
June 6, 2019 rolls around, you've already for several months, maybe as many as 8 months, reached a point where you feel like you've forgiven your dad for what he's done and you wanted to move on, correct? Based on your testimony a moment ago.
Yeah.
And you're also by then, sort of having feelings of resentment about your mom.
Well, it wasn't just to her. I mean, it was a lot of people to have certain emotions for. But yes, there was.
You were unhappy with the household
Was
situation.
happy with the house in general.
And you placed a lot of the blame at the feet of your mother. Is that fair to say at that time, based on your previous answers to me?
I mean, there was blame to go around. It wasn't just her,
but you did feel a fair amount of resentment towards your mother.
There were some problems, yes.
Yeah, and you'd already been working with Mac for probably 6 months by then, talking to him.
I don't. Say it again, please.
You started working for Mac at the beginning of 2019.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and by June 6, 2019, you've been working for him for about 6 months.
I think so.
Okay, I mean thereabouts.
Yeah.
I mean doesn't need to be super specific, but you're working for him for a number of months by then.
I can't remember exactly how many months, but sometime that year.
You recognize that oftentimes when people act, they don't always announce their intentions, correct?
Sure.
And so in order to determine their intentions, you have to engage in sort of an active interpretation based on their actions of what they're intending.
I suppose.
Okay. Do you recognize that sometimes someone's attitudes towards the person whose behavior they're interpreting can affect the interpretation?
How do you mean?
Are you open to the possibility that someone's feelings and emotions about the person whose behavior they're interpreting could affect their interpretation of that person's behavior?
I'll see you at the side of the bench.
You remember that you talked a little bit about the way your father looked during your last conversation with him, which was on January 22nd, 2021?
Yes.
At that time, you had not actually seen your father in about a year and a half, correct?
I believe so, yes. I can't recall for certain, but I believe that was the last time I saw him.
Okay. Meaning that by the time you saw him, it had been quite some time since you'd seen him before?
Yes.
Okay. At the time that you stopped seeing him, about a year and a half before, he was 51 years old, correct?
He was.
He already had some gray hair.
A little bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of old age, but not because
Right.
of stress.
Right. And so when you saw him at the firehouse, people's weight fluctuates all the time. Do you agree with me?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Different for everybody.
Yeah. And because you hadn't seen him in quite some time, there could have been a major fluctuation in his weight over the course of that time.
Through the firehouse? What do you mean?
Well, what I'm saying is you hadn't seen him in a year and a half. So the ordinary fluctuations of weight that you would see in the ordinary course of seeing someone, you would have missed all that.
It's possible, yeah.
Yeah. And so
I've seen pictures, though.
you saw pictures of him?
Yep.
Okay. And as far as timing of those pictures, were those closer to the time you left the house or closer to the time that you talked to him?
Closer to the last time I talked to him.
Okay. Now, when you last talked to him, do you know if that was the end of a shift or the beginning of a shift that you were talking to him?
I think that this is important to note. I don't think that you will find another person that can read you better, know you better, and judge your responses better than your kids. Kids know their parents. They watch everything. They've seen you through many different situations. And I think what they're trying to do right now is have Michael question whether his dad was tired or looked a little under the weather because it was just a long shift. But I would tend to believe Michael that he probably looked a lot more aged and tired than he should be, but because of all the stress he was going through, that is where he was now.
I don't know. I don't know what his schedule was.
Okay. Well, you know that his schedule at the firehouse is 24 hours on, followed by 2 days off, 24 hours on, followed by 4 days off, right?
I don't know his schedule, but I know he did 24-hour shifts. I just know what days he was off in between.
Okay. So you know that he had a 24-hour shift.
I didn't know that, yeah.
And so that would be like a 12-hour shift overnight and then another long shift the next day.
I don't know. Sure,
But that's what a 24-hour shift would
sure,
be,
yeah.
right? Okay. So if there had been, for example, would he spend the night between those two shifts at the firehouse?
Yeah, we spent the night at the firehouse, yeah.
And when he spent the night at the firehouse, if there had been a call, that would have disturbed his sleep, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you know if he was at the end of his 24-hour shift or the beginning of his 24-hour shift?
I don't know. I didn't ask him. I don't know what
Okay.
schedule was at that.
All right. So if he had been on for 24 hours straight and you were seeing him at the end of a shift, would not be that unusual for him to look tired, would it?
I mean, I've seen him at a 24. I was with him a couple of times at the
Right.
firehouse during a 24-hour shift.
When he was a much younger man.
When I wasn't too young when I went with him. It would have been like 6 years ago. I don't know if that hasn't. He's been doing it for over 23 years, and he's looked the same throughout those 23 years.
And there are lots of variables that can make a shift more tiring or less tiring depending on what happens overnight.
It can be.
Right. And you just don't know that information, right?
No.
Right. Now, do you agree with me that you told the story about the firehouse at grand jury all the way back in 2021?
Objection
I'll see you at the side of the bench.
You described the event at the firehouse, that last conversation with your father at grand jury. Do you remember that?
I don't know. I don't remember if I did.
Your testimony today is that you may have seen a bruise on him,
Yes. I may have seen one, yeah.
but you're not 100%
I can't say
sure?
for certain.
Okay. When you spoke to the grand jury, your goal was to tell them essentially everything relevant that you knew that was the truth, correct?
I told him the truth.
Right. And you tried to tell them, to the best of your memory, everything that was important that you knew.
I told him what the truth was, not what I thought was important.
But you told the truth, but you told the truth based on what you thought was being asked of you and based on what you thought was important given what the question was, correct?
Correct, out of what I saw when I was there.
Right. And today you say that there may have been a bruise.
There could have been.
There could have been a bruise. Okay. Is your memory exhausted with regard to whether there was?
No, but that was 3.5 years ago when that happened. So
Okay.
I remember it. We were there a week after it happened, so the details are kind of foggy.
Would the fact that your father had a bruise be an important observation, do you think, or a significant observation, do you think?
I just told him what happened, what I was doing there for.
Mhm. But do you think that it's something that would have stood out in your memory, certainly, if you'd seen a bruise?
It could have, but I wasn't looking at that. I told him what I was there for, but I wasn't paying attention to if he had marks on him. I was there just to talk to my dad. I wasn't too focused on if he had any injuries on him.
Okay, so you don't know if he had any injuries on him.
I'm not too certain.
Okay. And you don't have it. Do you have an actual memory of seeing a bruise, or you're doubting that?
Objection has to answer multiple.
I don't
He
know.
can explain to the jury what his best recollection is of whether it's dad had a bruise when you saw him that.
I did see, like I said, I do remember seeing bags under his eyes,
Okay.
but there could have been darker spots that were right below that too, below the eyes itself.
Okay. Do you remember having that memory, or is it sort of a surmise that it could have been, the bags could have hidden the black eye?
No, it's thinking about it now. I'm starting to remember what he looked like.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Given the limitations of what I said,
Yeah.
if you think it's appropriate, yes, you may.
Showing you the document?
Yep.
transcript?
Yeah.
So they're having Michael jog his brain and memory to see if he recalls whether he said there was a bruise or not prior, which is fine, but I honestly think that his testimony is being taken as truth, his truth, because he hasn't tried to mislead the defense in any capacity.
That's your name there?
Yes.
Just so I'm clear, this is the area of the transcript that talks about that last meeting, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Could you just look through that
Yeah.
transcript and just to yourself, and just raise your hand when you see the part about having a black eye?
What's even this? I never mentioned any of his physical appearances here, including his.
Thank you, this is important.
Now, you mentioned after you left the home, you would be in regular contact with your siblings,
My sister.
your sister Sophia,
Yes.
and you heard in the sort of weeks before was it a week before you sat down and had a conversation with your father that you had heard something about a text saying they're fighting again?
From when I met him at the firehouse.
Yes.
It was either sometime that week or the week before.
Okay, so it's within about a week of that.
Yeah,
So that-
the first met. Yeah, when I
Okay.
met him.
When you heard about the fighting from Sophia, was there any mention that it was physical fighting or just verbal?
She just told me they're fighting again. I want to get out of the house.
And again, his sister is texting him and reaching out with her parents continuously fighting. And that kind of lends more to Michael's character, that he was trusted with his siblings. They would reach out when they needed help. Basically, it just all continues to add up to character and be a great witness in this entire trial.
Okay. There wasn't any statement about physical fighting.
I can't remember what I said on the text or what was sent to me.
Okay. In fact, Sophia, you don't remember Sophia ever describing a physical fight after you left the house, isn't that right? Just verbal.
I can't remember. A few years ago. I would have to look back and see what she sent to me.
Okay, but as you stand here right now, nothing stands out with regard to Sophia telling you about physical fights after you left the house.
Not the top of my head, I can't remember.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that you and Mac perhaps had some doubts about your father's alcoholism. Did you ever get a sense that you believed that your mother believed that your father was an alcoholic, right?
She was pretty involved in the process, so yeah.
And she would go to like Al-Anon, correct?
Including Al-Anon, yeah.
Yeah. And she would read the AA books, correct?
I don't know what she read enough, but
Okay. And you're also aware that she was going to school at Quincy College, right?
yes, I was aware.
And she was studying some sort of psychology.
I don't know what she studied.
It was your understanding that one of the reasons she went back to school was to try to understand what was going on with your father?
I don't know. She told me that she wanted me to be proud of her, that she was going to school.
Okay. Did you have a sense that one of the reasons that she went to school was to try to figure out and support your father, though?
Yep. Can you answer it if he knows?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So, for example, when she decided that she was going back to school, did you have a sense that she was doing so in order to help support your father?
I don't know. That wasn't important to me at the time.
Okay. Now, we talked on direct examination a little bit about the layout of 679 Moraine Street.
Mm-hmm.
We also talked about that large living room, dining room area.
The open floor plan, yeah.
Yeah. That was connected to the kitchen, correct?
Through 2 steps, yeah.
2 steps. About how high up were those 2 steps? A little over a foot?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. On June 19th, when your mother grabbed the knife was it from the kitchen drawer or was it from the block of knives?
Say that again?
You said that you were there when you saw your mother grab the knife on June 6, 2019?
Yeah.
Was that from the drawer or was that from the block of knives?
I don't know which one, but there was a block of knives, and right above it was a magnet that held kitchen knives on that too.
And do you remember where she got the knife that she grabbed?
I can't remember which one, but it seemed to me it was more reasonable that she grabbed it from the magnet. That was easy to just grab.
Okay. And you were there when she grabbed it?
Yeah.
Within a few feet of her, like 3 feet of her?
That was behind her, yeah.
3 feet behind her. As soon as she grabs that knife, at that moment, you go into action, right?
Yeah.
And that's when you sort of do sort of the reverse. Is it more like a full Nelson or more like a bear hug?
No, it was wrapped. My arms were wrapped around her, like around her backside, but around her arms. So her arms were back like this.
Did she, when you say that she grabbed the knife and she moved,
My heart.
how
hurts
far
for
did she
him
get
and his
towards
siblings.
that threshold,
What an
the
awful
2 steps
situation.
of the living room, dining room before you were able to stop her?
There's probably like a step or 2 from where the knives were.
Okay. So she only was able to get about a step from where the knives were when you stopped her. She was still in the kitchen.
Yeah, she's in the kitchen.
And then you brought her and sat her down in a chair, still in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay. And your father was outside one of the doors that went off that living room, dining room area.
He went through the side door, but he's still visible through the screens.
You could see him through those windows, correct? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Right. But meaning if you're in the threshold between the kitchen and the living room, dining room area, you can see through those screens. Is that what you mean?
Wait, say it again?
So where can you see through those screens? Is it in the kitchen or is it in the steps leading down to
in
the
the
kitchen?
kitchen, you can see it.
Okay. So he's in off of the living room, dining room area, correct?
Outside, yes.
Yeah. And your mother is in the kitchen the entire time during that interaction.
Yeah.
Okay. How tall was your father?
I don't know how exactly to tell, but maybe like around 6 feet, a little bit bigger, maybe.
Okay. And your mother?
I have no idea. Maybe 5'4", 5'5", maybe. I don't know.
All right.
Good afternoon, sir. Just a few questions for you. Defense counsel asked you about the time when your father shared with you that he was an alcoholic, and you used the word confusion on your part.
Yes.
Can you explain why you were confused about that?
Me and my sister were having conversations of
Objection, Your Honor.
So just
All right, not to the conversation, but why were you confused by that revelation?
to me, I don't know what alcoholic meant, but it didn't seem like my dad. We were just described of how alcoholics were, and he didn't fill that criteria to us.
Objection and move to strike the us.
I'm going to just ask you to limit that answer to
Sorry.
your own confusion, sir.
Sorry. You didn't seem like an alcoholic.
Okay. And defense counsel asked you about end of 2018 and the fact that the affair kept being brought up to you and how it bothered you that it kept being brought up. And I believe you said it would have been nice if the defendant didn't bring up the affair every day. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that how it seemed to you, or is that how it was, that she was bringing it up every single day?
It was every time.
And you also indicated defense counsel was asking you a number of questions about your potential resentment towards the defendant. You remember that line of questioning?
I do.
And he asked you, and that was because of the affair, and you indicated that wasn't the only reason?
Yes.
Were there other reasons you resented her?
It was
It's fair game. Let him answer.
how she was being physical and how she was verbal towards everybody in the family.
Objection, move to strike.
See at the side of the bench.
Sir, just to go back, you indicated that wasn't the only reason that you resented your mother because of her bringing up the affair every day. Could you answer that again? Why else were you resentful of her during this time period?
She was being physical with everybody in the family, very violent, and how she was treating different family members.
And with regard to Mac or Mark McDonald, that was brought up, that line of questioning, did, and defense counsel was asking about whether basically Mac's doubting your father being an alcoholic affected you. Did it affect you, or did you have your own independent doubts?
I had my own thought on it, and he kind of agreed with what I thought about. So, but I mean, that wasn't the only thing we talked about. It was just like everything as a whole, what was going on.
And in terms of the line of questioning about how you were, about your father's purported memory loss, and I believe you indicated you were told about his memory loss. Is that right?
Yes,
Who were you told about his memory loss by?
the defendant.
So just a side note, and not super important, but he's called his mom Christine and defendant throughout this. And up until this point, he has only glanced over at his mom twice.
And just to be clear, during all the time you lived with your father up until June 6, 2019, and any time thereafter that you saw him, did you have any red flags about any kind of memory loss?
Absolutely not.
And did you have any red flags at all about your father being an alcoholic before 2018?
Absolutely not.
And defense counsel asked you a couple of questions about the 1 year CHIP event from AA. You recall that line of questioning?
I do.
And I believe you indicated that you said your father, looked like he wasn't allowed to say a word. Is that right?
100%.
Can you describe that?
He, for when he was up speaking,
Objection, Your Honor. No objection.
I note your continuing objection. You may answer.
so can you repeat the question?
Yes, I believe you indicated that your father at the AA 1 year CHIP meeting looked like he wasn't allowed to say a word. What makes you say that?
All he said was, thank you, could have done with my family. And then Christine kind of shoved him over to go to the microphone.
Objection, Your Honor.
Do you want to be seen? Would you like to be seen, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
All right.
So
The answer will stand.
thank you. The defendant shoved him over so she can speak, essentially,
Yes.
and then she continued to speak for 30 to 40 minutes, I believe you said.
Yeah, around 30 minutes, yeah.
And why did that stand out in your mind, sir?
Because
Sorry.
she was talking about her experience on why she stayed and how she got on her hands and knees, or my dad got on his hands and knees and begged her to stay when she had her bags packed to leave him. And that's why she decided to stay.
Was it kind of all about her?
Yes.
You also indicated defense counsel was asking about other CHIP events and whether or not you attended them. And then with regard to the 1-year CHIP event, you indicated after some hesitation you went to that event, correct?
Correct.
What was your hesitation, sir?
A month prior, I got into altercation with the family at the house. My sister texted me, or she,
Objection.
I'll ask you another question.
Stay.
So you had some hesitation about going?
yes, because
Dude,
we got an
dude.
altercation with the family at the house.
Okay. And did Mac influence you about how you felt about your mom in general?
No, he kept his personal opinions about her to himself. He was there to listen about what I thought about her.
Sir, I know you've described a lot of difficult things involving your mom and your relationship with her and what you witnessed. Is it fair to say you also had a positive relationship with her at times growing up?
I did.
Could you describe that?
Yeah, we would always crack jokes. Sometimes when I was younger, I didn't know how to cook, so I would make a small, like, half-assed dish. Sorry for language, but we would watch TV shows we were both interested in. And when I was in middle school, I did a little bit of like Zumba, like an after-school curriculum. So at that time, it seemed like a loving relationship between the two of us.
Did you love her?
I did.
I thought it was really interesting that this is the state asking this line of questioning. They didn't have to. They're there to paint her to look a certain way for the jury. So to bring up happy memories and love, and not even say, well, do you still love her now or anything like that. I thought it was interesting and made me even more sad for him and his siblings.
And with regard to what you may or may not have testified at grand jury soon after these events, fair to say you were never asked to describe anything about your father's physical appearance when you visited him on that last occasion at the firehouse, correct?
Correct.
You were strictly asked about your conversation with him, correct?
Yes.
And I believe you were beginning to say you're now picturing in your head what your father looked like on that last visit, correct?
Correct. It's coming back to me a little bit now.
And could you describe that, what
Yep.
you're visualizing?
Like I said, bone definition was pretty clear. Bags under his eyes, white hair, seemed tired, skinny. Like I said, I remember seeing a darker spot under his bags, kind of closer to around his cheekbone, if anything.
Did it appear to be a bruise?
Like towards the end of a bruise, yes, but it didn't seem new.
One moment, please. Nothing further.
Okay, so I thought his testimony was extremely important for the state. Definitely shows Christine's crazy behavior, not just to Michael, but even her own kids. I did a different video with Janine, who was Michael's mistress, and I thought that her testimony was the changing point for the entire trial, because it really started to highlight the different things that Christine had done that was unreasonable and borderlining almost illegal things. She was trying to blackmail her. But with that change, I also think that Michael Jr.'s testimony just puts the nail in the coffin. If he witnessed all of these events while living there and even after moving out, he seems to be a very genuine person, so I would have to believe that the jury completely believes him. The trial gave closing arguments today, so they are officially on verdict watch, and I actually thought that there was a chance that they might do a late night verdict today. I would not be surprised if they get a verdict in by tomorrow morning, and I will be shocked if it is not guilty. Sometimes you really can't tell which way a jury is going to go, and even like in the Florida State with Ashley Benefield, who just got sentenced, or just got her verdict of guilty. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but I think that with all the witnesses that came forward, it's pretty clear that she was doing things that she shouldn't have been doing. I'm trying to monitor my words so I don't get flagged. But she was kind of a danger to everyone around her, and I just think that this is done. So I'll be interested in seeing if they do one in the morning, and if they do, I'll probably come back and do another video to discuss what the plan is from there, if there will be an appeal. It'll be interesting. Thanks for watching, guys.